The ripple effects of Donald Trump's ban on transgender athletes already making waves.
And we heard the White House say this earlier. Now we hear directly from President Trump that they're not going to be welcoming to, it seems, any transgender athletes to compete in the Olympics.
I want to make this a really good signature because this is a big one, right? Oh, I think we have a 10.
And such a focus was this conversation about trans athletes. What's really interesting is, according to a lot of studies, there's only about 30, maybe 50 openly transgender athletes that compete in college sports. And yet this has been such a big focus, point of attention and legislation and now executive orders for Republicans across the country and now at the White House. Basically, this executive order, as we understand it, is going to direct federal agencies to look again at how Title IX was written or rewritten and to put pressure on private institutions around college campuses, around college sports, but also potentially even elementary and high school sports. Could be as much as the Olympic Committee. The White House was getting questions about the Olympics coming to Los Angeles. But basically, look for pressure points to try to make sure, as they say, that they're not transgender athletes competing in athletics writ large.
This new executive order is being followed. You also heard the President Trump talking there about other sort of measures for enforcement. One of them, which our understanding, according to sources, is that they're going to use the Department of Justice, if need be, to look into this. Of course, the Department of Justice is stacked with Trump loyalists who would have no problem, following something like this. He also talked about how he plans to use DHS Secretary Kristi Noem to police visas that are being approved for athletes that he says are coming in under a false identity. Of course, that would be trans women. He also talked to saying how he is going to use Secretary of State Marco Rubio to hit on something that Mary Alice just brought up, which is the Olympics. The Olympics are coming here. And we heard the White House say this earlier. Now we hear it directly from President Trump that they're not going to be welcoming to, it seems, any transgender athletes to compete in the Olympics, and that Marco Rubio is going to be tasked with delivering that message. So really a lot of different prongs here, Alex. I think it's easy to, with something like this, to say, how are they going to enforce that? But it seems they really are getting down to business with it.
Watch what I do, and then I'm going to give you some pens, okay? You ready? What a nice picture this is, huh, Governor? You ready? We'll do a good job. Wait, let me press that. I want to make this a really good signature because this is a big one, right? Oh, I think we have a 10. We have a 10.
God bless you, Mr. President.
Pretty good, huh? I see that. Okay? Good. Now you're going to go out.
Several congressional leaders, not only members of Congress, but top leadership. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, we saw, was sitting there. It seems like some Republican governors as well. But the backdrop, yes, these female athletes. We saw that often on the campaign trail. A number of female athletes, especially at the collegiate level, who would appear on stage with then candidate and now President Trump talking about how they wanted to get trans women, biological men, out of their athletics. I mentioned this earlier, but I do think it is really important to note that we're talking about such a small percentage of athletes. Some estimates it could be as low as 30, if not maybe 50 openly transgender athletes in college sports. I'm thinking about the governor of Utah, Republican, obviously a very conservative state, who actually vetoed a ban like this that was written in his state legislature, in part because he said there was only one openly trans athlete in K through 12 at the time that the legislation was being proposed, and he thought that it was essentially, the way he talked about it was overblown and potentially bullying. So look, this is a really controversial issue for so many, but yet has been a cornerstone of Trump's campaign, and he's delivering on a campaign promise, Alex.
The president's executive order has put tremendous public pressure on private organizations.
NCAA President Charlie Baker releasing a statement writing, President Trump's order provides a clear national standard. The move upsetting many in the trans community, like Schuler Baylor, the first openly transgender NCAA Division I swimmer.
This decision is cowardly, despicable, and crushes so many young athletes' dreams.
Former UPenn swimmers on the team with transgender athlete Leah Thomas now suing the NCAA, UPenn, and the Ivy League to have Thomas's collegiate records wiped off the books. Thomas set several Ivy League women's swim records and won a D1 national championship in 2022.
I do think that there is going to be change, and people are going to feel more comfortable speaking out and doing what is right, and just making sure that the little girls who are coming up behind us are not left behind.
Critics argue data does not show transgender athletes have any advantage, and that this pushback is unfair to the trans community.
There's no evidence that trans athletes have an advantage over anyone else in sports. Trans athletes play sports for the same reasons as anybody else, for our love of the game, to be a part of a team, to challenge ourselves.
A New York Times Ipsos poll from January found 79% of Americans do not believe transgender athletes should be allowed to compete in women's sports. Donald Trump now pressuring the International Olympic Committee to ban transgender athletes ahead of the 2028 Los Angeles Games.